Champions of Psychology is meant as education and entertainment. It is not a substitute for medical advice or professional counseling. Discussion of mental health topics will be primarily rooted in research and the personal experiences and self-disclosures of the hosts. While we can provide generalized education and possible mental health resources, we cannot offer any recommendations, advice, or opinions for any specific persons, cases, or situations. We provide these resources and links at our sole discretion, but have not necessarily vetted or reviewed any resource. We assume no liability for the use of the information or resources on these sites, and we encourage you to use your own best judgment.
Hello, and welcome to Champions of Psychology, a show with the goal of openly talking about mental health and gaming presented by Codename Entertainment and TakeThis.org. Every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on twitch.tv/CNE Games or later on your favorite podcast service, Mitra, Jordan, and Raffael Boccamazzo, aka Dr. B, talk about mental health in these unprecedented times, as well as how gaming affects us. If you're here with us live in the chat, you can leave a question that I, Treavor Bettis, will ask them later in the show. And our topic today is depression. But before we get into that, who are you fine folks for people who may not know?
He always gets me to open up.
No, we have a precedent at this point.
Okay, fine. It's true. So I'm Major Jordan. I'm a clinical counselor. I'm a psychotherapist in private practice in Victoria, BC. And I love games. I enjoy them in my life with my family. I enjoy helping other people understand and cope with screen time for their kids, for example. And I enjoy incorporating games and gamification into my practice as well, where appropriate. So that's me.
And I am Dr. Raffael Boccamazzo, better known as Dr. B for long Italian name reasons. And I'm waiting for the day that stops making Treavor laugh.
It's a good one.
If after 15 episodes, I think, but 17. Okay. Yes. Wow. But I am a non-practicing doctor of clinical psychology, though I did work with people at one point. I am the clinical director of TakeThis.org, which was in 2012, the very first mental health nonprofit to serve the game community. We are all about educating our game community as well as destigmatizing mental health matters. And I also happen to be an expert on the topic of role-playing games applied in clinical and learning settings. And so, yeah, we're here to talk about depression.
Yeah, the most fun topic that we totally are excited.
I do feel a little guilty about having this much enthusiasm in the morning for talking about this.
Sorry, I'm trying to fix the code real quick.
It feels incongruent to be here like, all right, who's ready to talk about depression?
And the reason I'm smiling is honestly, I see so much of it in my practice, and I see so many misunderstandings around depression and how it operates and what it really is, that I'm just keen to help demythologize, I suppose, and also destigmatize.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, there really are a lot of misconceptions around the topic of depression, and this really aggravates me, even within the world of mental health. Like, I have a friend who had a medical professional recently say to them that you can't be depressed. You had your hair done. Yeah, I know. I'm like,
what?
Really?
Yeah. Ooh.
Yeah. This is where I'm being a little flippant about it, but this is a serious topic. It's one that I've actually struggled with my entire life, largely as a secondary manifestation of my autism. And I know, Treavor, you've been open about yours as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know if I've mentioned, but yeah, I've struggled with it in various forms.
This is where my gallows humor comes in. I'm like, if you're depressed and you know it, raise your hand.
For the audio listeners, we all raised our hands.
We did. Yeah, because I think it's a common experience to varying degrees. And then, of course, there's clinical depression, which we're going to get into the difference between those experiences.
Yeah.
So.
So why don't we start like we normally do with these words? Like what is depression? Because like you said, there's a lot of wrong ideas out there of what depression is.
Yeah. Well, Mitra, you wanna take the lead on this one?
You have such beautiful notes.
Said no teacher to me ever.
I expect Cornell style next week.
Yeah.
Cornell. That's the thing. That's the Thanksgiving thing with all of the things coming out of it, right?
That's a corn. No, that's not a cornetto. That's a
that's right,
horn of plenty. Yeah.
See, and you see, this would make people be like, "You all can't have depression. You're making jokes and laughing."
Well,
making jokes all the time.
Yeah. Okay. So depression is different than just being down, feeling down for a little bit, because there are absolutely appropriate things to feel sad over in life. Okay. There are lots of things that are going to make us feel sad. All right. And I just think we don't use that word enough, that I'm sad. It feels childish, but it's also accurate that there are things that make us sad, and there are things that should make us sad.
Absolutely.
But depression, on the flip side of that, is where it's 9 symptoms. Okay, there are 9 symptoms in the manual, the Bibli, according to the American Psychological Association or Psychiatric Association, of which you must meet 5 or more for a period of 2 weeks or more. And one of those 2 symptoms has to be a depressed mood most of the day, nearly every day, by either your self-report or the observation of others, or it has to be something called anhedonia, which is just everything feels blah. The stuff you used to enjoy doesn't sound enjoyable anymore. You're just kind of going through the motions. And it needs to be one or of those 2 or both, plus at least 4 other symptoms.
And I'm just gonna jump in and say, yeah, anhedonia is the opposite of feeling pleasure. We talk about being hedonistic, so this is not that. This is when it's really hard to take pleasure or enjoy the things that you used to do. There's just an absence of that.
Yeah, and I will say for me personally, that's actually the biggest warning sign that I'm struggling with depression again. And if I'm especially playing video games, if I'm playing video games, and I love video games, I love a lot of things. I love video games. If I'm playing video games and I find myself doing it just to go through the motions and I'm not actually enjoying it, that is a huge red flag for me.
And now just remember, that can also be many things. If you're staying up too late playing video games and you're not enjoying them, you probably just need to go to bed.
It could also be that's a Sunday night and I've done all of the Destiny stuff during the week and I'm just waiting for reset to happen.
You're like, well, poop, but there's no updates. Nothing good is happening here.
Bungie, why?
but going into it, it's more than just the anhedonia. It's more than just the low mood most of the day, nearly every day for 2 weeks or more. You're also talking about either physical agitation or physical, like your body feels heavy. The technical term is psychomotor retardation, where you're not moving, where you have no energy, or you're talking about you're talking about a massive weight change in either direction, or an appetite change, or you're either sleeping too much or too little, or you're having just thoughts about your own demise. And by the way, if you are having those, please reach out. Please access our mental health resources. There are mental health resources in the chat. If somebody would type in the appropriate code for that, you can go to takethis.org/mental health resources. But but it's a whole spectrum of things. 9 different symptoms of which you must meet 5. And somebody once did the math for me, and it was something like 54,000 different variations.
Wow.
And that's why there is no one depression.
Yeah.
I have the depressions. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're feeling depressed, or you notice a drop in mood, or a drop in your enjoyment of things, or you notice you're sleeping more, or it's harder to get going, and that it's even harder to get going for those things that you normally would have been thrilled, excited about. Yeah, and you've lost a certain amount of hope. This is where it's really important to just look out, like be present to that. Ask yourself what's going on. Don't ignore it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my I've said this on the show before, and I will say this to many people, hopefully in the future, that if you're debating whether or not this is worthy of attention, it's worthy of attention.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you're even debating.
I've been reflecting in the last little while about being inconvenient. And I think we all work hard to not be inconvenient, and even to ourselves. And so when we start to talk about our mood or how we might be doing, or it's just so much easier in the short run to pretend positivity. It is not easier in even the medium or the long run. You need to do the inconvenient thing. And if that means, actually, I'm not feeling so good, that's important.
Yeah. Now the somebody let's see, Mom23 Reds put in the chat, depression is no joke, but sometimes joking about things help me cope with a downtime for me. And that's like one thing where it's like you probably don't recognize when someone has depression. Like,
Yeah.
you probably know someone who you don't know has depression that totally does. I the one that I get all the time is they're like, what do you mean you have depression? You're always like loud and laughing and the fun at the party. And I'm just like, yeah. And then immediately afterwards, I am a wreck and I'm just sitting in my living room staring at a wall because it's just terrible.
Well, I wonder if it helps if it helps us to differentiate between emotion and moods. Because emotion and moods, I think about it kind of like weather and climate. Okay. Emotions are the moment-to-moment experiences, whereas moods are the long-term trends. And you can have a depressed mood while still having moments of laughter.
Yeah.
And you just kind of come back to that baseline. I mean, for me, yeah, actually, I won't even get into it. Turn it down to let's talk about what brings me down, and I'm going to bring the room down in the process.
And that's the worry. I think that's the thing, right? This is what stops us talking about it.
Yeah.
The thing is, if somebody, okay, people often ask, how do you cope with being a therapist? How do you cope with being around big emotion and tough feelings and being present for all that? The thing is, those are my clients' experiences and feelings. I hold the space for that. I can be there with them, but I'm not experiencing it in the same way that my clients are, or that my loved ones are. And it's not my job to take it over and manage it and fix it. It's my job to hold the space for it so that people can look at it, so that they can feel that someone's got their back and is present for them while they're experiencing those feelings. And I think this is the misconception around our own experiences and the fear of burdening. And that's a big word that gets used a lot. Just as we talked about anxiety and how much melodramatic comes up as a word. Right? And so burdening really comes up with depression. And that melodramatic is a piece of it for some people, but that sense of, I don't want to bring someone down. I don't want someone to have to, be in my presence when I'm feeling this way. Well, chances are you've been around someone who was trying to rush to fix, who had a really tough time sitting with your pain.
Yeah.
This is not what you're asking for. What you're asking for, I imagine, is validation, love, support, presence, care, but not for someone to have to come up with the solutions.
I mean, I'm gonna be honest. Like, I will tell people, like, oh, I didn't talk to so and so about my depression because I didn't want to burden them. I didn't want to ruin their day or anything like that. But really, what it is, I'm like, I'm afraid of hearing like, oh, just smile or just be happy. Like, I'm afraid.
Yeah,
I'm more afraid of like
being depressed.
Oh,
yeah, just stop it,
dude.
Right?
The freaking have you tried just being happy? I'm just like, literally, someone said that.
Hold on.
Oh my gosh, I never thought of that. Why? Oh, why didn't anybody? I went to so many therapy appointments and they never suggest. Well done. And
right?
it's
I'm cured.
Yeah.
Woo.
So like I'm more and obviously like for like loved ones and stuff, I know they're not going to do that and whatnot, but like when like someone who I don't have that kind of connection was like, oh, why didn't you tell me you're depressed? And it's like, well, because I didn't know how you were going to respond, and that's, I don't want to threaten where I'm already at, the low level I'm at, by getting taken lower just by one simple sentence, because that's all it will take.
Well, and beyond that, even if someone is trying to be helpful,
yeah,
and they're kind of misfiring, now you have the task of not only managing your own mood, but now you have to manage their goodwill.
Yeah, who's being burdened here, huh?
They're trying so hard to help you fix the problem. Meanwhile, you've tried all the things that you know how to do. And that's the thing. I wish people would understand that if most of the time, if somebody is being brave enough, and I mean that, if somebody is being brave enough to open up to you about their feelings, and they've been struggling, they've been struggling with symptoms of depression, they have tried everything they know.
Absolutely.
Kale is probably not going to fix this thing.
Overlord
is not a panacea.
Yep. Overlord in the chat was like, "Have you tried yoga?" Ugh. It's like
Lauren and I have talked.
It's like telling an ADHD person, "Have you tried lists?"
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, they're all lost in my house.
I have no idea where I left that last one. Yeah. I mean, really.
I have tried lists. I have 15 of them probably under my chair hidden. I have no idea where they're. But it's the same thing, that as human beings, we jump to try and fix people's problems. And it's a very natural reaction. We don't want people to struggle. We don't want people to suffer. But what's counterintuitive is that if somebody has brought this to our attention, they're at the point where they've tried everything. They have done everything they know. And paradoxically, me offering them solutions is going to ironically make them feel worse in all likelihood. It certainly does for me, and for a lot of other people I know with depression, that like, I'm already down on myself. Why can't I fix this? Well, this person thinks they have the solutions. I haven't done those solutions, or maybe I have tried those solutions and spiral.
Yes, and the thing is, the solutions that are really going to work for you are your solutions. And that's why self-help books don't work so terribly well. There might be one or two things in there you might find really useful, absolutely, but you have to find the solutions that are going to be working for you. And so somebody else coming up with, well, have you tried this? Have you tried that? Can just end up making you feel worse. And worse yet, it's not making you feel or allowing you to feel really listened to. And of all the things that we know works, really being listened to, cared for, not feeling in isolation with your emotions, feeling that support goes a long way towards helping people manage their depression. It's not perfect, but it means that, okay, you have my back, and now I can maybe figure out what other things to try. And maybe if I'm having trouble getting to the mental health professionals or looking up stuff, you know, so much of the time with my clients, it's a loved one who's actually making the call with their full permission, but they're like, I'm calling to see if you're free. I'm just calling to see if maybe we can set up a consult for my partner or my friend or my whoever. Because if that's one less thing that person has to deal with, that's great. They don't have to make all the calls in here. Actually, I'm not taking people now, or I'm not doing this, or I'm doing that, or how about you try these people? Just some of that can be managed. And that's where you can really be helpful to someone who's struggling. It's like, what can I do? You know,
my wife and I, like, we both struggle with depression, and like we almost have like a routine now where, like, if one of us says, like, we have different levels of it. It's like, I'm in a funk, I'm not feeling great, or I'm depressed. And, you know,
that's smart.
And essentially, like, as soon as one of us says that, usually the first question is, do you want to talk? And if the answer is no, it says, the other person's like, okay. And then we'll probably go grab a game controller, stick it in the other person's hands, put a blanket on them, turn on the TV, and be like, do you want me here, or do you want to be alone? And we just basically have these things set up where it's like, we know when the other one is in that mood or in that mode, or whichever one you want to do, and just essentially do what we can, knowing that we're not the answer. We can't solve it. We can only just do things to possibly help in that moment.
Well, and
let's-
having an ally is important.
Yeah. And let's take the pressure off. You don't need to have the answer.
Yeah.
And you don't need to solve it.
Yeah.
In fact, it's better if you don't actually try, because what I know about working with people and therapy is that agency is so important. And if I can feel like I can make choices that are going to work for me, and maybe if I'm really feeling foggy about it, I'm not sure what those are, but my job as a therapist is to help a person uncover that for themselves. And when you have a loved one, that's something you can certainly try to do a little bit, which is to say, let me know if there's something I can do to make things easier for you right now.
Mhm.
What's going to make this evening better? Is there some way I can support that? What's going to make tomorrow better? Is there something I can take off your plate or help you do? You know, these are very practical things, and they're things we usually can do, as opposed to getting in there with, well, have you spoken to your doctor? Have you done this? Have you done that? Did you try? Have you read this self-help book? You know,
Oh
why
my
don't you go
God.
outside? It's such a nice day. Why are you in here? Why are you, those things, just shame and blame
Mhm.
and maim, really.
Well, you reminded me of one of my most hated internet memes. And it's one of those things where somebody on the top panel of two is holding a pill. This is a drug, and below is a picture of a verdant green path. This is an antidepressant. And I'm just like, no, table flip. Table flip. No.
God.
No.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
great. If you can solve your chronic depression by going outside into nature, cool. And there is some evidence to support the idea that green time can be helpful. But if there was an easy solution for everybody, I wouldn't be having this conversation with you. I would be peddling it.
Mhm.
Okay? The truth is that properly prescribed medication managed by a licensed provider can be there's tremendous evidence for that helping people to manage symptoms effectively.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
It's nothing. I have used antidepressant medications at various points in my life when it's hit that point, and I will tell you that when we found the one that worked for me and my psychiatrist, it was like color returned to my world that I didn't even know was missing.
Absolutely. It really can be very life-changing for people. And I think being on an antidepressant doesn't mean you're going to be on an antidepressant forever, first of all. You might not be. You might be someone who needs to start taking it in the fall, and you may be able to not take it, once spring hits, and then you may need it again in the fall, right? You may need it occasionally at certain points in your life. And the more tuned in you are to yourself, your moods, your experiences, the more you will know whether that's true. And for some people, yes, you'll need to be on it, but the quality of your life will improve so much. And it's not the medication that's doing that. All the medication is doing is it's giving you a little bit more energy, a little bit more of what your brain needs to do well in terms of neurotransmitters. And that allows you to do the rest.
Mhm.
I mean, similar to my being on ADHD meds, it was like the difference was night and day. I was just able to focus and function so much better. And I haven't needed them at all points in my life, but once hitting menopause, definitely the fogginess of menopause, I will tell you all, plus the fogginess of being ADHD just collided in a super foggy way where it's hard to see anything. Like it's so you have to just be in tune with yourself, and that's a process, a conversation with your doctor, with a therapist, and tuning into your own needs.
Mhm.
So
Well, and one of the things that and we really haven't overtly brought this up is that depression, major depression, and let's differentiate this between a momentary response to an extremely sad event, so depression with a little d, versus major depressive disorder, which is a pervasive lowered mood.
yeah.
But it's also cognitive depression. This is not just about your mood, this is about your brain capability as well. And literally one of the symptoms of major depressive disorder is the inability or decreased ability to think or concentrate. And if you've already got some executive functioning challenges, like everybody on screen right now has either ADHD or autism, and we probably get real weird when we're depressed on top of that.
There's a question in the chat though, or it's not a question, but just something Liberation said. The problem with solutions to depression, whether it's exercise, green time, whatever, is how do I make myself care enough to make the effort? If I felt my own well-being was worth expending on energy on, I probably wouldn't be depressed. But like I specifically remember a moment where like I was in a depressive state, and I was like, and I looked at my wife, I'm like, okay, you know what? Let's just go out. Let's just try that. And we got out, and I got out of the car, and I had my sunglasses on. It was a bright sunny day, and everyone's running around having a good time. And I went, yep, didn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's no one solution. If there was, I'd be peddling it.
Yep.
Absolutely.
But the idea that there are things, this is why we talked about several weeks ago having a tool belt. Because, you can't use a drill for everything. If we're bringing this into just mechanical tools.
And chat, you can save it. We know you could probably do it at some point, but don't worry. This is an analogy.
This is a metaphor, and I know there's going to be some contrarian in the chat, because there is in every. I know you gamers. I get you. I am you. I get it. But it's can and should are different statements. All right.
Yeah.
So you're not gonna. It's not effective. It's not effective to use a drill as every tool. Okay, you certainly could use it as a hammer for a little bit before you break the battery on it, and those lithium-ion batteries are not cheap.
They're not.
So instead, you've got an entire collection of things that you build up over time that are effective for different situations, and you do that through trial and error. And that's why a good licensed mental health professional really is helpful to, Mitra. This is what Mitra does all day.
Absolutely.
When she's not here, is you help people figure out their individualized solutions.
Exactly. And I'm going to say, if what you're experiencing is that I've tried a number of my different tools that normally might help manage mood or depression, because it doesn't necessarily go away. It's going to be less, and sometimes it's going to be harder to manage. So when you get to that place of I've tried this, I've tried that, these things used to work in the past, now they don't. Yeah, go see a mental health professional. Go see your family doctor, because it can be really important to get something in terms of the self-care and the as in talking with someone about what new self-care solutions might be a help, and also what's really going on. Because what I often find, and I find this even with the pandemic, I've had a few clients talk about their depression and then talk about how they feel like they're just not getting anywhere very far, career-wise, life-wise, or, well, I thought when I had this time, I'd be able to indulge, I'd be able to do this hobby a bit more. I'd be able to play more guitar or do this or that, right? And I say, okay, you know what? You're in the middle of a pandemic and you didn't get sick, and you're taking care of your family, and you're still able to do the work and the things that are required of you. What do you think of that? And they're like, okay, well, guess I'm doing better than I thought. And it's like, my point here isn't to minimize people's experience of their negative mood or their sad feelings or the sense of being a burden to others, but to also say, please notice what else you're going through. Because we usually forget. Oh, I'm feeling so low. I should feel better. Or it's such a nice day. I should. Or my kids are doing great. I should. No.
Should is a terrible word.
Should is a terrible word. Do not should on yourself.
Should, well, I'm going to take a moderate perspective on this. Should has usefulness.
Okay.
If there wasn't the word should, we wouldn't have society, because should tells us there are standards.
Yeah.
However, that can be taken too far. And the idea that you should be happy all the time it's BS. It's absolute. I mean, again, we're coming back to the idea of mood versus emotion.
Yeah.
And the idea that I love the comic The Oatmeal. I'm sure a lot of people I'm sure a lot of people in the chat do as well. And the Oatmeal did an amazing comic that highlights the idea of conflating happiness with satisfaction and or being content, because happy is a momentary effusive emotion that is not sustainable long term. Satisfaction, on the other hand, is something that is potentially sustainable long term as a mood, and they are different.
Very. I'm going to say, just as we don't expect someone to be angry all the time or sad all the time, why would we expect them to be happy all the time?
Thank you.
Yeah. 100%. Okay, let's go ahead and take a little break for our disclaimer to remind our viewers and listeners. And remember, people here live in the chat, you can leave questions that our awesome mod today, Lauren Urban, will take and put into the text doc that I will ask later in the show. So get those ready and put them in there. But yeah, let's take a little break.
Champions of Psychology is meant as education and entertainment. It is not a substitute for medical advice or professional counseling. Discussion of mental health topics will be primarily rooted in research and the personal experiences and self-disclosures of the hosts. While we can provide generalized education and possible mental health resources, we cannot offer any recommendations, advice, or opinions for any specific persons, cases, or situations. We provide these resources and links at our sole discretion, but have not necessarily vetted or reviewed any resource. We assume no liability for the use of the information or resources on these sites, and we encourage you to use your own best judgment.
Yes, for people asking in the chat, that was Lauren, and that was her playing the oboe, and it is absolutely fantastic, and I love every time I hear it.
Oboes rule.
Yeah, seriously.
Obes too.
Yeah,
Obes, yeah, apparently. According to me in the chat, 30 seconds ago, Obes rule.
Obes rule.
Obes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Obes.
So we have a couple other points that we want to hit, and I don't know if we're gonna be able to get to all of them before we check in with chat. Yeah, but one of them that I definitely did want to talk about was the common cold of mental health. Why is depression called the common cold of mental health?
Oh, well, it occurs in so many different circumstances, and it's co-occurring with so many other mental health disorders as well, that it's just there. Like so many people experience that when they're experiencing other things in their life. For example, bereavement, right? And so you might be experiencing bereavement that eventually turns into depression because there's some loss of meaning in your life. So there's that. And then we often feel complicated feelings, both around loss and even around happy events. For example, it's common to feel a little bit depressed around the time that you get married or shortly after. And this is a weird one, but it's just like your life just changed and you had this beautiful marker to note that, and that's wonderful. But there can also be some sense of that change. Postpartum depression is a big one. It's biological, of course, as well. And for some people, because of the profound life change and the loss of themselves as they knew it, that can absolutely bring up tremendous depression for them at a time where it's very complicated to feel that way because you also expect or hope to feel a lot of joy. So I think when we talk about that common cold experience and we say, I ought to be feeling this way, joyful, happy, full, satisfied, right? Maybe I've reached a major life goal and now I feel a bit meh, right? I've worked so hard and have motivated so long to get to this thing. Now what? Right? And so it's just not an unusual or unexpected experience. Now, whether it turns into something clinical in terms of now it's been some time and these emotions aren't abating, and so we are talking about major depressive disorder, you know, where it has its beginnings is still important, but what we're dealing with and now what we have to cope with is also actually front and center.
Okay.
Well, and to add into that, even taking it outside of the concept of bereavement, the idea that someone you care, someone you love, you've lost them, that they've died, the idea of other mental health challenges are so stigmatized, and we often feel guilty or ineffective about the fact that we struggle with these things when we shouldn't have to. And that's again, it's BS. It's internalized ableism, frankly. And for like, let's take autism. I mean, I talk about it. I'm autistic. There are so many moments in my life, especially before I was diagnosed, that I was reacted to or thought of myself as a broken version of normal, not realizing I'm on a different operating system. And I went for 3 decades viewing myself as a broken version of normal, as ineffective and as incapable, and things weren't getting better and other people reacted to me badly. And for me, and for a lot of other people who have a primary diagnosis, whether it's, whether it's PTSD, whether it's anxiety, whether it's schizophrenia, whether it's bipolar disorder, ADHD, autism, it doesn't matter. The depression often ends up as a secondary manifestation due to these internalized messages of ineffectiveness, of disempowerment. Actually, this is probably a good time to bring up one of the more commonly used models of depression, which was pioneered by a guy named Aaron Beck, a psychiatrist who's about 90 gajillion years old right now, about 3 feet tall and still hilarious. And this model of depression has 3 parts, and that's a negative view of self, a negative view of others, and a negative view of the world and future. So basically, I suck, other people suck, and nothing's going to get better.
Yeah.
A lot of interventions, a lot of psychiatric and psychological treatments approach those to basically either start showing evidence of that you don't suck, or maybe others don't, and there is possibility for change. They try and kick out one of those legs to, rebuild the whole thing. But yeah, those internalized negative messages is part of the reason depression happens with so many other primary diagnoses.
Yeah, it's why I often say to clients, you have to be kind to yourself, even when you don't want to. That's actually when it's most important to be kind to yourself. And it's not going to come naturally, and it's not always going to be easy.
Oh, it's hard.
And you still need to do it.
Yep.
That's a should.
Well,
wait, go on.
Well, that
was a joke.
That becomes a double-edged sword.
Yes.
Yeah. This idea that there's a really common thought cycle for people who struggle with major depressive disorder, and that's like, I feel a lack of motivation. I don't do the thing. This confirms my previously held belief that I'm not good at things, which decreases my motivation. Lack of motivation, don't do the thing, and around and around and around it goes.
Yeah, and that's why the kindness, because I think what happens there is we corrode our own self-trust. And I have definitely in my youth, I basically bombed out of university. I did fine in my first year, but my first year was a special program where it was quite small. It was much more like a community college. And then second year was roaring into those courses where you have 400 people in a classroom and it's just huge. And it was a big campus and it was overwhelming. And of course, I didn't know I was also dealing with ADHD. And I bombed out badly. But the mistrust was really difficult because I would say, okay, today I'm going to get this thing done. But I wouldn't. I couldn't. I didn't know I couldn't, but I couldn't. Okay, well, tomorrow. And after a week of this, you start saying, I'm going to get this thing done. And there's the other insidious voice within the self that says, sure you are. Yeah, sure you are. Right. And so that's that corrosive process. But if we actually can see our own capacity or lack thereof, and that's okay, right? We have to start where we are. So that's the first thing, is to really acknowledge, actually, I'm finding this all really difficult. Or I can't do today, okay.
No, I can't do today.
Today.
Nope.
Yeah.
I have said that so many times. Nope.
Yeah.
I can't do today.
Yeah.
I'm bouncing. I will do today tomorrow. When tomorrow becomes today. Yeah. Now this is turning into a Muppet thing of, the train that goes tomorrow will return again today. I don't know.
I like it. Yeah.
Do you not know that? We'll talk about that later. That's
we
a
will
Kingsman
talk
song.
about that. I just love this. I'm touching into a cultural icon of some sort, and it's so useful. This is a challenge of not growing up in one culture and having multiple different things to draw on, is you also miss certain things, which is cool, because then I get to figure them out now.
Heck yeah.
So great. But yeah, so that experience of being able to go, yeah, okay, I can't, that's starting where you are, which is, I think, really important. If we don't know what our baseline today is and what we're dealing with, then we're not going to find it easy to be kind to ourselves, because we have this unrealistic expectation of what we're supposed to be able to accomplish. And it's great that we could accomplish that 5 years ago, and maybe we can't now. Or maybe we have a dream of accomplishing it, but we can't right now. And we're not always in that space of self-loathing and those brain weasels. Those brain weasels. Yeah, exactly, right? We're not able to actually look at me and take care of me. There's a small inner me that's just going, make it all stop, right? And we have to be able to acknowledge that self. So.
Well, and I want to actually bring that up in the context of something somebody brought up in the chat. And this is a huge pet peeve of mine when it comes to personal struggles. The idea that someone else has it worse, and they might. So therefore, what we're dealing with isn't a problem. No. If I have a broken finger and someone else has a broken leg, I still have a broken finger.
It's not a pain Olympics, people.
No.
Don't be a depression
a problem
elitist.
is a problem is a problem.
Yeah.
And you have to acknowledge it at first.
And I don't want people feeling ashamed. I take a strong stand on this. Really, I know. It's like, but I should be so fortunate, and I have this and I have that, and I shouldn't feel this way. No, that's not helping anything, really. It's like, it's okay. Just be in contact with your own feelings so that you can be kind to yourself, so that you can start to take those steps that will genuinely help you. It is true that some have it worse. It is true that some have it better. But where we're at, we need to deal with us. Let's not take on anything else right now.
Yeah.
Let's just be good to ourselves and deal with where we're at.
Well, and let's acknowledge it honestly. Compare. I'm really hesitant to ever say one thing or another is the way. Like comparing ourselves to other people, there are advantages to that. There are also disadvantages when we take it too far or too rigidly. And in the idea that if someone else has it worse, therefore I should not be struggling with something, that's BS.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That is absolute BS. Because if you're struggling with something, that's the starting point. Saying I shouldn't be struggling, it makes it more of a struggle.
Exactly. And now you're dealing with your own feelings about yourself, as well as the feelings of being depressed, as well as the context in which you're trying to cope. And like I said earlier, you might not really even be fully aware of what that context is. For a long time when I was experiencing depression and really struggling with school, I had family issues and some trauma I was trying to untangle. I had a new culture I was still kind of coping with, because I'd only really been in Canada about, 3 years at that point. I had ADHD, which I didn't even know was a thing. So all of that was playing into my poor self-worth and how I was feeling about me. And if all I was focusing on was, my self-worth should be better, and I should feel better, and I should get this work done, and I should manage that, then you see how impossible it would have been.
Wait, Mitra. Wait. So you're telling me that having upended your life and come to a culture where things are done very differently, 24/7, being out of step with the people around you, having an undiagnosed executive functioning challenge, and trying to do high-level work in high-level educational work while all of this is going on.
Ooh, I forgot to mention the
There's
trauma
more?
of 2 deaths. Yeah.
And you're grieving 2 people.
One at 13, one at 17. And at
Okay.
this point, I'm only 19, let's remember.
So your frontal lobe is underdeveloped, hasn't fully developed.
Don't call me out like that.
So your frontal lobe is basically under firing. You're grieving 2 deaths. You've got you're a teenager. You're in a fully different culture, and you're trying to do high level academic work. And you're telling me you're struggling,
Right? I know. The shock. I was so surprised.
It's almost like that was a lot.
Just a little.
Yeah.
But until I sat down with luckily the university had the counseling program, and I sat down with this lovely therapist who was a therapist in training. She really did a great job, but she was like, okay, let's look at anger and numbness and upset. And, and it's like, wow. Yeah. And I will say that I think, again, the problem with positivity is that for sure, because I was dealing with so much, I also wasn't allowing myself. I had no idea that one ought to allow oneself, in fact, to feel all those feelings that were coming up. Now, there are really good reasons why we don't feel our feelings. Okay, there's a lot to them. We still have to do our life. And there's a tremendous fear usually that when our feelings come up, we open that door and it's like, all of the crap in the basement is going to come out like Pandora's box. And there's going to be no way to put it all back. And so it's terrifying. It's like, I can't go see a therapist. I have to talk about this stuff. I am to talk about it. I can't see it. And it's going to take over my life and I won't be able to function ever.
Trevor, I would like to report Mitra. She's talking about me without permission.
Well, actually, I wanted to hop in real quick because we're at the time where we usually switch over to chat. But one of the first questions is very similar to this. This comes from Blue Scale, which says one issue with going to a therapist is that it means facing things that you aren't you are trying to not think about. That can be a hard thing when you're not ready for it, and that's kind of what you're talking about there, where it's like there's a lot of stuff to unpack there.
Yeah. The first thing any good therapist will tell you is how do we scaffold this experience? So while we dismantle the old house, we need supports in place so that you can cope. Yep. The first thing anybody does, particularly if you're coming in and you're in crisis, is help you figure out your supports, help you find them, help you figure out how to be comfortable relying on them, take the pressure off, because we're not going to dismantle the house in a day. There's no wrecking ball here. It's brick by brick, and we're going to just take it apart slowly, and we're going to work it out. So the first thing is to know where you're at and know what you need, and we go from there. And but in terms of knowing what you need, it's okay to come in not knowing what that is. A good therapist will help you uncover your solutions.
And that's actually, this is something that I bring up with people who very commonly they ask me questions like, how can I use Dungeons and Dragons to help my friends deal with their mental health challenges? You don't. Don't do it. Don't do it. Because asking people the questions to help them unpack the horrifically messy trap-laden toy box that's the easy part. Learning how to scaffold those safeties, as Mitra was talking about, to build a foundation of support while you look through all that stuff at the pace that they can handle, essentially containment and safety, that's the trickiest part. And that takes a lot of practice and training to be able to do. And there's a lot of liability to it as well.
So another question that was in the chat. This is from Cy Morgan. Question: I tend to feel down Sunday afternoon and start thinking that there's not much to enjoy in life. Is that a depression thing?
Maybe. I mean, it could be a lot of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's, I mean, it depends on also, like, do you have a 5-day week job? Because I know that, Sunday night was, man, that was time for my mental status to come out and play, man. It was just like, hey, you just had this really great weekend. Now everything's terrible.
Yeah.
And I do that because of anxiety.
Yeah.
And so it really, for individual questions like this, I think the first thing we're going to say is, go, if this is a concern to you, go talk to an individual
100%.
licensed mental health provider who's going to help you get to the root of that
Definitely,
stuff.
because that could be a lot of things. It could be a connection or disconnection with your job. It could be that's the first time you've actually had time to sit and be with your feelings. It could be just the overload of the week coming up and you're just in a chronically tired state. It's so hard to say, right? So it's worth looking into.
Let's see. PCM author says, is it sometimes useful to wallow in your lows? Just let them happen.
Yes. I mean, that's the short answer, but it's hard to say what you mean by that. I guess where I take this is that sometimes having a chance to examine what's underneath the low feeling is useful, right? Because sometimes we have an emotional response to something, anger, sadness, whatever it is, in a funk, but we don't know why. And so getting a chance to explore that is important. Wallowing is such a difficult and loaded word.
Yeah.
It's another one like burden.
Yeah.
It's like, if I'm sitting there with my feelings, am I wallowing? Or am I just exploring my feelings, or am I just allowing myself to be for a bit so that I can figure out what's happening, or just mourn or grieve something? So I find that to be a difficult word because it's so judgment loaded for people. It's like, it implies, okay, so you're deliberately staying in this state, when you should change it, right?
I've done that, by the way.
So we have the show kind of as like a mental health and gaming, and there's actually one that I want to talk about here really quick that has to do with this, and that is a game called Celeste. If you have not, if you have not,
you
played,
mean Dr. Mark? Take this as Dr. Mark award-winning game Celeste.
If you have not played this game, I highly recommend you go check it out right now. Like, unless you're driving and listening to this as a podcast, then pull the car over and do a Google search. But it is a side-scrolling game. It looks like it's kind of like a Super Meat Boy style, where it's just like it's super hard and everything. Except there are so many ways to help you get through this game, and the reason why it is that is because even though this looks like it is just about a woman trying to climb a mountain and there's weird magic things happen, it's about depression. And there is a part towards the end that I won't spoil for you all that made me sit there and go, wow, I had never thought about my depression like that before. And
love that game.
And it has to do with this question, which is why I bring it up. I highly recommend you go take a look at it. It's very good.
It's just, first of all, it's a great platformer, and I'm gonna brag. I only died 1,014 in beating that game. Only 1,014.
Again, like I said, there are options in the menu to just help you get through the game if you need, and do not feel bad about doing that. It is completely fine to do it. Get that angry troll that you imagine back at it behind you yelling at you for playing games on easy out of there. They're just stupid.
It is Celeste.
Yeah. If you can put that in the chat, that would help.
I'm going to actually put in a plug for a little game that I think would be very useful for people who don't understand depression, or aren't experiencing it but want to understand maybe what a loved one is going through. And that's a little PC game that I think is still available called Depression Quest.
Oh God! Oh, Depression Quest. That is a powerful game. That is a powerful game in terms of narrative. Oh yeah, Mitra.
I guess that's a ringing endorsement for Dr.
Yes and no. It's a little too good.
It is available on Steam.
Yeah, it's really excellent. What it is that if you are experiencing depression, you're going to say, geez, this is really calling me out. Stop playing, go get help, really. But if you think like, I don't really get what this is or how people experience it, it's an excellent game for that.
Yeah.
You will really get a much more nuanced understanding of what it might be like for a loved one or those around you when they're experiencing depression.
So bad. It's so intense. That game
It is intense.
It is brilliantly done. It is also super intense.
I'm saying this thought directed at the person earlier in chat that was like, sometimes joking about my depression helps. I brought it up on Steam and it says reviews mixed. I went, just like my depression.
Yeah, it's perfect. I have very mixed reviews of my depression.
Yes, same.
No, depression. 1 out of 5 would not recommend.
Yeah, definitely.
Don't even rent, not buy. Just don't buy.
This restaurant sucks.
Yeah.
Oh man. But we do have a lot of questions there, but unfortunately that is all the time that we have for discussions today. We will touch on this topic again. I mean, one of them that we didn't even get to that is toxic positivity. We touched on it a little bit, but if you don't know what that is, viewers and listeners, please go check it out. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Good vibes only.
Anyhow,
and so you really put people in a position of feeling shamed for having emotions other than go, it's all great, and that's such a huge problem, particularly yes I was gonna say
I see that on dating apps. It's an immediate swipe left.
No.
But yeah, that's all the time we got for discussions today. I'm sorry if we didn't get to your question from the chat. We hope that you'll come around next time and bring some more questions with you. But Mitra, Dr. B, where can people find you if they would like to hear or see more of you?
I have a website, mitrajordan.com, and I am not super active, but present on Twitter. So feel free to contact me that way. And I'd love to hear from you. So.
And I am
He's everywhere. He's everywhere.
No, I'm on all the socials at the Dr. B. It's right down here. It's TheeDoctorB. Not the Dr. B, the Dr. B. But it's actually, if you're going to follow somebody, I mean, yeah, you can follow me, but it's more important that you follow Take This at Take This org on all of the socials. We got a lot of good stuff coming, and we'd love to have your support.
Yeah. You can find me on the Difficulty Class podcast every Friday, as well as Champions of Lore every Wednesday now at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on twitch.tv/CNE Games. So if you got some time tomorrow, come hang out and we'll talk some good lore. Just as a heads up, later today, Bardic Inspiration is postponed. So enjoy the rest of your day, play some Isle Champions, have some fun, get some good loot. But I want to thank Lauren for moderating in the chat and doing a fantastic job. Thank you so much, Lauren. You're juggling so many things, and I appreciate you. And thank you to Codename Entertainment and Take This for giving us an opportunity to have these discussions. If you missed any part of the show, you can check it out later as a podcast at 2 p.m. And if you have any suggestions for future topics that you'd like to hear us talk about, because we're coming up towards the end of the season. It's already happening. We're getting there, and we're going to need some ideas for the next season coming up. Yes, there will be a next season. Spoilers.
There will be a next season.
Season 3, baby.
Season 3, The Reckoning.
Mental health.
Yeah,
The Reckoning.
Mental Health 2, Part 3.
Season 4. This time we take it personal. But yeah, you could send in topic suggestions that you want to hear us talk about to championspsychology@codenameentertainment.com. But yeah, thank you so much for being here, asking questions, and hopefully enjoying these conversations. And we hope that you will be here with us next week. But until then, take care of yourself.
Champions of Psychology is meant as education and entertainment. It is not a substitute for medical advice or professional counseling. Discussion of mental health topics will be primarily rooted in research and the personal experiences and self-disclosures of the hosts. While we can provide generalized education and possible mental health resources, we cannot offer any recommendations, advice, or opinions for any specific persons, cases, or situations. We provide these resources and links at our sole discretion, but have not necessarily vetted or reviewed any resource. We assume no liability for the use of the information or resources on these sites, and we encourage you to use your own best judgment.